Welcome to the Movie Geeks United 30th anniversary celebration of The Color of Money. Audiences first met the indelible character of Fast Eddie Felson in 1961's The Hustler. Brilliantly portrayed by screen icon Paul Newman, Felson was a cocksure pool shark who met his match in Minnesota Fats, played to suave perfection by Jackie Gleason. Newman was anxious to return to one of his most beloved characters, to explore the manner in which Felson would mature with the passage of time, and 25 years after the original film, he got his wish. Enlisting director Martin Scorsese and working from a poetically crafted script by acclaimed writer Richard Price, The Color of Money gives us a Felson who's definitely wizened by age. He's retired his pool cue and no longer functions as a player. He's now a successful wholesale liquor salesman who remains on the periphery of the game as a facilitator to young hustlers in training. But when he takes Vincent under his wing, a puffed-up, drippingly arrogant young pool shark played with extreme bravado by Tom Cruise, he recognizes himself in the young man, and the competitive fires begin to rage within him once again. In the center of this formidable twosome is Vincent's girlfriend, Carmen, perhaps the biggest hustler of all. She's portrayed by the stunning actress Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio in a truly great performance. Savvy and knowing, authentic, always watching and absorbing, by turns puppet master and a master observer. This was only the second major feature in which she appeared. Her first was the high-profile role of Gina, Tony Montana's sister, in Brian De Palma's Scarface. Other credits include leading roles in James Cameron's The Abyss, Michael Apted's Class Action opposite Gene Hackman, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves opposite Kevin Costner. Recently, she could be seen on a recurring role in the hit television series Limitless. Miss Mastrantonio joined us to discuss her recollections of shooting the film, working alongside Scorsese and Newman, and additional projects that distinguish her remarkable resume.
Did Color of Money come into your life from the usual audition process?
Yeah, it did. I'm trying to think. It was just a meeting. I suppose a lot of people can say, well, I was the last person they saw. As I recall, I'm not really sure. I just went in one day, I remember, and met, I don't know if I read first or if I just went in and then there was a Tom Cruise was there and I do remember meeting Marty Scorsese because I had done a few days on The King of Comedy, and I remember, talk about it, the slight neurosis and guilt that people hang on to. He said to me as I walked in the door, "It wasn't your performance, I just never liked the line." And I didn't know what he meant because that was before you could video, and I didn't go to the cinema. I didn't dare go to the cinema and see the movie. No, it took me ages to do that. And I played college girl outside the stage door at the very beginning of the film, perhaps. I stood in front of Robert De Niro on a piece of tape, and it was outside and for a week, and I thought, my God, if this is filmmaking, I better go open a bakery or something. But yeah, that was Marty's first words, something to that effect. It wasn't your performance, I hated the line, or I always hated the line, that's why I cut it. It was just interesting. But and I
so
think
he remembered you. He remembered you from The King of Comedy, that little scene. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. College girl. Yeah. Yeah.
So you were in the room with Tom Cruise. This was the same year as Top Gun, so it wasn't the internationally known. I mean, he was a couple of months away from being internationally known, wasn't he? Or?
Yeah, This was on the heels of Risky Business.
Okay,
and he was so young still. I do remember him one day saying, we're sitting in a car waiting to roll. I mean, we were in and the car was the set. And saying, he was talking to, I think Paul Newman was in the front seat. And I remember Tom Cruise just, but I'm only 23. And he was just trying to figure this whole thing out. It was pretty enormous. And he couldn't have known what was going to happen. But
this was a very early, I think this was something like the second big movie that you did. You just come off a major role in Scarface. But I would think for even the most seasoned veteran, working alongside people like Scorsese and Paul Newman just had to have been overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm not a kind of an overwhelmed type of person. I'm pretty grounded, and also I could see that in other things I had done where people just fell over themselves because they were in the presence of other of great talents, and these people did have great talents. I'm not demeaning any of that. I'm not taking away at all. But A, it makes the great and the good very uncomfortable, and B, they just demean themselves. And I just thought, less genuflection, more focus is best.
Mm-hmm.
But, the truth is that they both are. I'll just use the present tense because Mr. Newman is no longer with us, and that should just never have happened, but that should not be allowed. But they are so keen on the process and so deeply committed to what they're doing that there is no awkwardness because they're there to do the best, and when they do their best, you do your best. And you only assume that you're hired for a reason. I know that's hard for all actors because we all do feel like we're going to be found out any minute, but they're so enthusiastic and such champions, and it's just so damned easy to be around that it makes the whole thing, no one comes in with wearing fur coats and 17 assistants, and it's just normal people coming in to do a day's work. And we rehearsed quite a bit before, and I remember Paul Newman saying, so we can enjoy Christmas, because we were meant to start shooting in the beginning of January, I think. And so we rehearsed for a couple of weeks prior to that, so everybody knew who everybody was, and it was quite nice, actually.
Yeah. When you read the script, did you recognize Carmen right away? Did you recognize that kind of character?
No. I mean, it's no, because I was I was already in New York, and it was suddenly so clear to me that when I was on stage, and particularly if I was in a musical, I was kind of this doe-eyed ingenue, and then suddenly I went to Hollywood, and they gave me a gun in bad language. I was like, oh, I don't know. This is so different. But no, not really. Other than It's interesting because now you're so many decades beyond where you were raised and what you are of and from. Now I'm not from Carmen's world at all, but I'm not far from people who are of Carmen's world. And very working class people, and there's nothing against it. But so I was very familiar with gals like her, and also, it's just on the page really. When it reads that well, you just give yourself over to it. If you say what Richard Price wrote, it makes the scene fairly easy, and everybody plays their part. But she was a survivor, old Carmen.
There's something so knowing and savvy about her. I mean, especially up against the Tom Cruise's character, his kind of youthful bluster. I mean, she has a kind of awareness that he doesn't, it seems.
I would say now, as an older woman looking back, if I saw a girl like her, it would be that she would not have known her own potential, and there's a sadness in that. So you can say, oh, she's shrewd, or she's this, or she's that, but actually, when you haven't been exposed to certain opportunities, you don't know what you yourself are capable of. She hasn't had the education, and she hasn't had the, quote, breaks, and she hasn't had, as I said before, the opportunities. So I remember at the time thinking, oh, she's ruthless, she would do anything. Or she's a survivor. You're like, when you're so young, surviving is really getting through the day and becoming exposed to the way other people think and things you hadn't quite fashioned for yourself or you didn't think were possible.
Yeah. Well, you've done so much, work since on the stage and in one great film after another, and I know you're doing a lot of television as of late too, and I'm wondering if there's usually a key to unlocking a character, or is it more kind of a gradual process? And if you can remember how that applies to your role in Color of Money at all.
I don't know that there's a key, because if you latch onto that key, then you're kind of playing one element all the time. I don't remember it so much with Color of Money as I remember it with, like, Scarface more. But she was watchful, and she said what needed to be said when she figured it didn't. She didn't say much. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't the front man. And I suppose she was the interpreter, ultimately. She was the interpreter for her boyfriend who didn't quite get it, who didn't quite understand what all was going on.
I think that the characters, it's such an important part of this movie. And I mean, just tonally, it's interesting because you're in between these two characters that are on completely different energy levels.
And she sees all and doesn't say much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
She sees it all, but it's not her gig.
I mean, I've always been a big movie fan, a movie geek, obviously, but and I was attracted to the film as a teenager because of Scorsese. And I got to tell you, in recent years when I've rewatched the film, it's meant a lot more to me. It's a lot more depth to it than what I got from it as a teenager, because I think the movie's actually about the process of maturing and transitioning. And those are kind of themes that I'm a lot more receptive to now as an adult than I was then.
Yeah. Did you find it all more subtle then? Because when you say it now, we're hardly grandstanding actors. You don't put Paul Newman in a film to get an opera. It's not that. It's a more subtle plane. Do you see more undercurrents now? I suppose you do, because you just said you do. But
yeah, I absolutely do. I think as a teenager, I watched it, and I think a lot of people expected this, expecting a typical sports movie where there's the big
mentor,
matchup at the end of it, and what the mentor takes over for the teacher, but it kind of subverts all of those expectations, which took me by surprise at first.
It's a sort of a coming of age and a letting go of age and a letting go of status, and the coming up and the going down.
Yeah, but I want to know the process of working with Newman, and what memories stand out either in your observations of him working or in your conversations with him.
I found him. He's the type of person who's very cool, but you wind up being very close to him because he wasn't at all sentimental, and he was very affable, very friendly, and kind of nurturing. He'd have us to supper and with his long-suffering assistant, Marcia. I remember her. I don't cook, she'd be saying, but I don't cook, and he'd give her the recipe and make her go off, and we'd have these lovely suppers in his hotel suite. But he's also a director, and he watches very closely. And I do remember on more than one occasion, and I cannot be specific because it's a very long time ago, but he would say that the camera were, trained on him. We would finish a few takes, and then he would say to Marty, "You are going to get are you seeing this?" And he meant me, which is very kind. And so, "You are going to get this, aren't you?" And not that Marty said, "No, I wasn't thinking of giving her any coverage." I mean, that would hardly tell the story. But it was very helpful. It was very helpful. And at times, sometimes too, I would watch him do something on camera that was very deliberate, and I thought, oh. So it can be an easier job. It doesn't always have to be such a struggle. It can be just something one does. It's like you don't have to worry about the hand getting up to the head. You just flip and do it and get it over with, He he would talk about characters in a way that a lot of actors don't. I remember doing I think it was where we're all at the big convention at the end, and Carmen comes up to him. Does she approach him finally, and they see each other? And between takes, he said, "I just realized he misses her." And he kind of misses her. He misses this kind of daughter figure hanging around, kind of whatever. But, recently I was at a jazz club in my neighborhood, and I'm loath when anything like this happens. When somebody said, "Oh, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio," and I was just like, you could hear me melting in the corner because I just don't like that at all. But by virtue of that, this woman came up to me and she said, "I'm Lisa Newman. You worked with my father." And it was his daughter. And it was about a year, anyway, he'd already died. And it was just, because I really felt his loss tremendously. And it was just lovely to have, and I won't use the word closure, but it was just lovely to be able to acknowledge the fact that with his daughter, his real daughter, because I used to say to him, "Can I just be another daughter? I'll just sleep on the sofa. No one will know I'm there, and I'll clean up after myself. I'm just going to come. You won't even notice me, really.
Yeah.
But
I mean, what a beautiful, graceful man. I mean, he did so much for the world. You know.
He did so much of it the right way. It's kind of astonishing.
Mm-hmm. But your relationship with Tom Cruise, I mean, it feels in the film, feels very comfortable and lived in. Like, you know, the dynamic between this couple. I mean, both the kind of the playful side, but you never doubt that, I mean, she's got his number. So I would imagine during that rehearsal process, there was a lot of opportunity to establish that with him.
I don't really remember. Yeah, they're just assumptions too. And also, I'm older than Tom, and I could feel that when I was with him, and I do something else. I was in theater. I'm a different person. I'm Italian American. You know, I'm just of that stock. So I'm very pragmatic, and I hear things differently than the way he hears things. And all we did was just to be who we are, and it worked. And you know, we're two professionals coming in. There's no flirtation. There's nothing. It's just two people walking into a room and starting committing to a job. And also, I want to say that a lot of it, you know, it's guided by Marty, which I really don't remember. I don't remember the rehearsal process, but I do remember. You know, Marty can hear. He could be a mile away because he can't get to the. He would always watch too. He'd watch a scene. I don't remember him being on a monitor, but honestly, he could be having supper a mile away, and he could hear where a scene goes off. If you are playing a scene someplace, he can tell when that third line, when you said such and such, you did. You thought, yeah, you're exactly right. That's when I started acting. I got distracted. I was going to do something, and I screwed up. So, you know, he can hear it. He can hear it. He can hear the truth leave the room. You know, he was great. He's a great. He never makes you self-conscious, does Marty? He never makes you self-conscious. So I think that helped everybody. Because it was always, that's great, Jamie, but don't do that again. You know, so he's like, okay, so it wasn't so bad, but you just don't want to see it again, you know, rather than, you know, berating or doing endless takes. You know, he didn't do that either. But yeah.
Was it a true road movie? I mean, did you guys travel a lot, as it feels like you do in the actual movie?
No, we were in Chicago. We were just in Chicago, in and around Chicago. As a matter of fact, once we were we were in a Toys R Us or something that was, because I'm from that area, and I actually went home and sat with my parents for a few hours because I had a few hours before I had to work again. So that I used my home as my trailer instead. Yeah, we were just in Chicago. Freezing cold winter, as I recall. Freezing cold.
But you got, I mean, the big news for you from this film was you got a nomination for it. And that had to have been an exciting experience.
It was a very exciting experience. Funnily enough, I never heard from anybody. I got the nomination, and it's odd. I think anyway, I won't go on why, but I never really heard from anybody in the company again about any of that. So I just sort of got myself together and I was doing a show here in New York. I was doing a show at the Public, and the Oscars used to be on a Monday night, and I was doing a matinee on a Sunday, and I got on a plane on Sunday night and went to the Oscars. I think there was a little frisson because some people were nominated and some people weren't. I don't know what happened there, but I really never, or I was supposed to, I don't know. It was just so odd. There's a lot about the film business that's odd because there's a lot of different camps, and everybody goes home, and you never see anybody again.
Right.
You know.
Right. You know, there's so much that I could ask you about because you've been in so many great films, and you're fantastic. I've loved what you've done for so long. But there's another movie that has an anniversary. There's a couple of yours that have anniversaries this year, and one of them is Class Action. And And I just rewatched that a couple of months ago, and I loved you in it, and I loved the film. It reminded me all over again that I love that piece. But I mean, in that film, you're acting with another one of the greats, Hackman, obviously, and he just seems like such an effortless presence on screen. But I would imagine that a lot of work went into that. I mean, what did you observe from working with him?
we got on like a house on fire. I look at that movie, and honestly, I don't know if it was our Midwesternness. I just done a play here in the city, so I was kind of ready to go. You know, you've been acting a lot, so you're very centered, and you can, anyway, you're just ready to move forward. And it was a very good script, and I look at that film now, and it really, to me, it just felt like a love story without the sex and all the other palaver. And it was between us about it, but we really just got on very well. We worked really well together, and he's there. He's like a rock. You know, you throw anything at him, and he's just there. You know, sometimes a particularly strong woman, you come at a male, and they kind of back up, and you think, oh no, it's only acting. Don't back up unless the director tells you to. You know, I'm not going to really hit you. In my mind, I'm going to hit you, but I'm not really going to swing. But and he's solid, and he cares too. He watches, and you know, he'll say, "You don't have to do that." Or if Michael Apted really got on well with as well, he's just great. He showed up years ago. I was doing a production here in the city, and he came to see it, and I was really chuffed that he came, and he sat backstage, and he came to my dressing room, and I hadn't seen him in ages, and I just thought, well, that was so kind of you to come and see this, because you didn't have to do that, you know. And we got on really well. Yeah.
You know, years ago I read an interview with him, and he was talking about his favorite moments from his movies, his favorite kind of personal performance moments, and he named two movies, and one of them was a scene with you from Class Action, when you're both in the kitchen, and he's talking about his deceased wife, and it's a scene that turns a little emotional before he exits the room. So I mean that's
really?
Special too. I mean, yeah.
You
I was telling
made
Michael
my
Apted that
day.
a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh my golly, you've made my day. Oh, that's, you know, sometimes so interesting, because when you stand with certain actors and you just look at them, they just look back. That's a very hard thing for beginning actors, is to look at somebody. They want to look away. And sometimes you stand opposite an actor and they're just willing to look back, and you think, we're going to be okay. Let's go. And don't forget, Larry Fishburne was in that.
Yes.
Larry Fishburne, I know. That was a good company. It was a really good. They used to make movies like that often, you know.
They did. Yeah, I miss it.
So sad. Don't you miss it? And I look at what's going on telly, and everything's digital, so it all looks the same. All the lighting looks the same. It's very distressing.
I want to ask you, speaking of time passing and how things have changed, I'm interested, since we're talking about a movie that happened near the beginning of your film career, and now you've got so much great work under your belt. I'm wondering if acting means something different to you now than it did back then, and if you can define that.
In many ways, I don't feel I act anymore, and that's kind of distressing. I mean, my film career stopped a long time ago. For whatever reasons those happen, I think, for whatever reason those things happen. I mean, and might have something to do with it. I didn't live in the country for decades, but at any rate, I wasn't really convenient. But you can become more pragmatic with the acting. You know, I'm doing television now. It's not character driven. As hard as they'll try to make it, it's really plot driven, or it's a procedural, and so you're really just getting this amount of information out, and you're trying to do as little as possible, because if you move your face, you know, you just look like the topography of, you know, I don't know, the Grand Canyon or something like that, because of the high definition, which is really distressing. I do miss the discovery of acting. What I miss, I'll tell you what I miss when you ask. I miss the process. I miss rehearsal. That's what I miss in television. And you miss it largely sometime in film, too, especially big adventure, you know, films that are always moving. You don't always have the time just to invest in the rehearsal process, just the listening.
Yeah.
You know, when things move fast, you're taught as an actor, you listen. You have to listen. How do you know what to say if you're not listening? Unless you're playing someone who doesn't listen, and there you go. But you take the time to listen in a moving too many hours a day working television series. You put the whole production behind, so it's just got to move. And that's what I miss, because that's the gravy for an actor, and that's where, I don't know, I can't make an analogy for musicians, or it's just you don't find anything. You just keep moving forward, and I miss the grace that you can find, you can be gifted with in a rehearsal process. Yeah.
I understand that, yeah. But at the same time, is working in television, is it more conducive to actually having a life outside of it?
Yeah. Well, film allowed me a life outside of everything, film, because film always, actually, I just said it afforded me my theater habit. It paid for my theater habit. And I was very lucky. I don't even think that happens anymore. I really don't. Now I see a lot of more movie people come to the stage, but I was a stage junkie, and that's where I started and moved on from there.
Yeah.
Right now, for example, in my little family, I have to be in New York for all kinds of reasons, and so I can't go anywhere. So I was really lucky. And, I came back to the country about 4.5 years ago, and it was like starting over. I mean, not exactly, but, you really, you're going into auditions. I think I never had a screen test. I was in film. I never had a screen test, so I didn't even know what it was, we played the waiting game, and managers and everybody did what they had to do, and I wound up with a job that shoots in New York and that doesn't have me working even every week sometimes, which is great, because television is just too long a schedule, too hard. And it pays the bills, it more than pays the bills. So yes, that's what works. But television doesn't work for a lot of people anymore once they put on this top of show pay and all of this. You know about that, where guest stars can only get like $7,000 an episode, say, where before you might have gotten more. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but how many episodes can you put together per annum to make a yearly wage? It's hard. It's very hard. It's gotten harder and harder.
Would you still go back to the stage?
I would. I haven't been in a couple of years, and now with Limitless going, well, we don't know. I'm either Jamie. I'm either unemployed or I'm on hiatus. I'm not sure. So I'm supposed to find out.
That must feel so strange. That must feel so scary in a way.
It's normal. That's what actors do. We never know. We really never know.
That's true. Yeah.
Insure all your plane tickets. Insure everything, because you just never know what's going to happen.